Those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? Story 1. The wedding was at a state park that's famous for its giant gorge and waterfall. I don't know whose idea it was, but someone suggested a photo overlooking this gorge and everybody was game. The wedding party went around to a stone security barrier and the maid of honor literally fell off the cliff to her death. It was like 500 feet. Story 2. This was one I worked at. After the ceremony, right at the start of reception, photographer was taking jumping photos of the bride and bridesmaids. So they were all jumping in the air while wearing heels. Bride landed and dislocated her knee, then passed out and kept going in and out of consciousness. We called an ambulance who turned up and fixed her knee, etc., but she wanted to continue with the wedding. She then had the first course of the meal and threw up down her dress and had to sit with her mom in another room while everyone else danced, etc. Felt so bad for her as she spent the rest of the evening crying. Story 3. The bride's father was 45 minutes late to walk his daughter down the aisle. While we were waiting, the air conditioning broke in the venue. It was over 100 degrees outside and humid as fuck. The place was overcrowded. You could barely move without bumping into someone else, and the heat, that was extra miserable. I guess the air conditioning problem had also affected the refrigeration or something because most of the food was spoiled. The only food on the buffet was salad, spaghetti, and rolls. Not enough to even feed half the guests. Most of the people left after the first dance. 2 of the bride's aunts fainted. The bride and the wedding planner were both crying. Story 4. It was a big wedding, over 300 people. Turns out the bride had been having an affair with her cousin's husband. The cousin had known for a little bit, but waited until the wedding to go table to table, letting everyone know the bride was sleeping with her husband. Poor groom was blindsided. Worst part was his father-in-law was well off and opened up a restaurant for him. Well, he lost his wife and his restaurant. Story 5. When I was 6 or 7, I went to a cousin's wedding. Everything was fabulous for me. So much sugar everywhere. Basically heaven. The reception was in a big community center that was reserved for the occasion. Went to the girls' bathroom, passing by the men's room to see my uncle on the floor. Went back to the main room to tell my dad my uncle was looking weird. Well, uncle had a stroke and had died. The bride spent the rest of the afternoon crying, and everyone except close family left. Bright side is, the marriage is still going strong after 20 years, despite what happened that day. Story 6. Drunk mother of the bride stumbled, fell, and rolled into a lake. Story 7. I've catered many weddings, and there have been some memorable ones. Fights between guests, wedding cakes falling over, red wine spilled on wedding dresses, the lot. The one I'll never forget, an all-day do, small ceremony, a few close friends and family, and a big reception filled with a huge buffet, every type of food you could imagine, and a free bar. All in the same venue. They had booked and paid for 250 evening guests, but 30 guests turned up, at most. My heart broke for this couple. A massive, beautiful converted barn, loads of foods and drinks, great music, but no guests. At about 10 p.m., the venue was licensed until 11 p.m., the buffet food had barely been touched. The few who were there ate, but it hardly made a dent as it was planned for so many more people. I asked the mother of the bride if she wanted me to cover and refrigerate the untouched food so the new couple could take it home, and her response of, "Oh, no, there are still a lot of people coming," was the most awkward I've ever felt in my life. No more guests showed. There was a flash of car headlights in the distance about 10:30 p.m., and the bride beamed when she thought it was latecomers arriving. But no, it was just taxis arriving to pick up the few who were there. It's the only event I have ever done where we didn't have to kick people out of the venue. At 11 p.m., the place was empty. In a nutshell, bride's parents paid for the day and the happy couple had zero control over their guest list. Her parents invited all of their friends to the evening functions, but in reality, it was just associates they wanted to flex on, resulting in no one giving a shit about an invite to a wedding where They didn't know the bride or groom. It was basically just a networking event for the bride's parents. Story 8. I used to do catering work, and this one time my boss sent me to a remote location in the woods on a beautiful river. I found out while we were loading the truck that the boss wouldn't be going and that I was essentially in charge. My boss promised that everything was taken care of, set up, etc. So, you can imagine my surprise when I arrived to this remote location and literally nothing was set up. We were only about an hour or so early, so I frantically started trying to get the tent in order. We needed extension cords to run coffee and tea. There were none. We needed tables set up for the food. There were none. I somehow whipped up impromptu everything for the missing things, and just as the bride and groom were arriving, we blow the fuse for our only power source, and the place is plunged into darkness. We reset the breaker. I move some stuff around. Blow the fuse again. This delicate dance went on for the entire evening, through speeches, first dance, the works. I think the worst part of the entire experience was when we went to rinse our dishes before boxing them up, and found out when we blew the fuses the water pump for the place stopped working. It needed to be primed again. At that point I said, forget about it. We'll take them back dirty, and the crew and I spent several more hours after the long ride home doing them. That was the day I worked a 15-hour shift without a break, and still ruined the wedding. Needless to say, I quit that job. Story 9. The mother of the groom was an alcoholic for many years. She decided to quit drinking cold turkey a few days before his wedding. During the reception, she had a seizure and was taken to the hospital via ambulance. Story 10. I went to a wedding where the bride and groom bought the wedding package on Groupon, which is fine. Why spend a fortune for one day? But I guess the venue thought that they could cut some corners, so they stuck us in a room that smelled so strongly of cat urine, some people immediately left. The only drinks were those from a vending machine. It was next to an airport, so every time a plane took off, the ceremony had to be paused because you couldn't hear anything. And the day after the event, every single one of us had food poisoning. Story 11. Was a guest of the friend of the bride. Did not know anyone attending. Very expensive, over-the-top place. Several hundred of guests in this very Italian wedding. Maid of honor grabs mic at the cocktail hour, begins her speech, rambling, drunk. Quickly devolves to stating the recently deceased mother of the bride was against this wedding, and that's basically what killed her. Plus, Vinny will never give up the prostitutes. She is tackled by several people and dragged away. The happy couple is separated and divorced within a year. Story 12. No one turned up to the reception except myself and partner. There was about 8 people in total, and the couple had went all out for the reception. Story 13. Attended a wedding reception and was seated near the cameraman. An aunt of mine was sitting close to the camera and spent the evening commenting and gossiping about everyone, and much of it came out in the video. The cameraman was great. He did 2 copies, one edited and the other no holds barred. The unedited version is the stuff of legend. Story 14. Best friend's mom got remarried and had an expensive, beautiful wedding, but for some reason didn't hire a DJ. Last minute, her mom asked me to manage the CD and gave me a list along with verbal instructions of when to play each. I tried to warn her that I simply did not follow, but she told me that she had confidence in me. Apparently, all her life she wanted to walk down the aisle to some specific song, but I just couldn't figure it out. They had to get walking to match the sunset. So she went ahead down the aisle while I flipped through a series of incorrect songs to the horror and amusement of the crowd. For years after I called my friend's house and her stepdad answered, he'd say, "Is this the guy who f***ed up my wedding?"